I think people need to readjust the way that they think about interest rates, because they're actually not bad right now. Yeah. So obviously the main issue is when you have a bunch of free money, people go fucking hog wild, right? And now you have this, overarching sediment in the market that's like the world is falling, and because rates have gone to 5-6%, when that's a big jump from 1.5-2.5%. So not only that, but not having rates that low really does say something about your economy. Number one, it tells other markets and even like the globe, the world, that your economy is struggling. Okay. And because the only reason why rates go down that low is to actually like spark growth in the economy. And you also do want banks making money. And the reason why you want banks making money is because when banks make more money, they give more money. Okay. They lend out more money. So you want that to happen. Right now they're tightening everything, and they don't, because right now banks aren't doing that necessarily. They're tightening up their lending because it's so volatile in the market. But nonetheless, if you were to have stable, decent rates like you would see back in the day of like anywhere from like 4 to 5%, which is where it should be, the banks are going to make more money on the money that you deposit, and because of that, they're going to be lending out more money. They're going to want to see, that's where you were getting more leverage for your own money, right? Because they were easing the requirements for lending and stuff like that. They want to lend. Right now, banks don't want to lend because of volatility. And then also back in the day when rates were so low, they also weren't necessarily, the leverage wasn't as good, right? So although the leverage wasn't bad, it wasn't as good as it once was, right? So because that's what I've seen before, right? And it wasn't necessarily because of poor lending practices like what the States was doing prior to 2008. It was because of the Canadian banking system. Again, I was banking in Canada only, not in the US back then, but you would see higher leverage. That's why with my first property, my first package of property, that's why the LTV was like around 80-20. There's no reason why. The only reason why I was getting that was because of rates, right? So I think there's like a really...
Do you remember what your rates were on that first package?
No, but it wasn't stupid low. It might have been around 4% probably, but that's a reasonable, those are reasonable rates, right? That's a reasonable rate. That's, part of the reason why you want rates like around that amount too is because you won't have runaway inflation, right? It'll control inflation while still allowing the economy to expand, but not expand, right?
Because I think
that's what you want.
When there's really, really cheap money, it makes, because then almost all markets will increase, right? And so what I think then is that every investor it's so hard for them to lose.
Yeah.
Right. And so everyone becomes an expert.
Yeah.
Everyone starts buying real estate. Everyone starts buying stocks. And what happens when there's cheap money, people are borrowing it and people are buying everything and fucking anything.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It all goes up in value.
Yeah.
And so it feels like no one can lose, but it's artificially increasing in value.
It's artificially inflated. So you don't want to have, so really low rates artificially inflates markets, and, artificially, I don't want to say artificial, I don't like that word really, but it sparks too much growth too soon, right? Which causes, obviously, like what goes up must come down. And when you have a situation like this, that it's going like what goes up, extremely quick and fast, it will come down arguably as fast or faster. So you don't want to have that. You want to have, sustainability, right? You want to see, and economies will kind of go like this, right? And that's fine, but that's what you want. You want this, right? You want a little bit of bump, right? You want like little nice rolling hills. You don't want a fucking Mount Everest and then down the other side again. Like that's not what you want. That's what we had.
Yeah.
That's the problem when you have rates like this.
See, I have a theory, is that I think that the extreme volatility is only going to get worse and worse and worse over time. The reason why I have that theory is because more than ever, you have retail investors in the market having access to being able to make investment decisions quickly, right? If you think of, let's say, the 1970s, for somebody to just buy and sell a stock, took fucking days, right? For you to like sell your house, like you didn't have access to all this data online on the internet, right? Like you had to fucking call someone up and be like, hey, I want to list my house. And they, like it's just everything was so much slower with one, nothing being electronic, and two, not having the access to the information, and three, people not being able to make these decisions on their own. I think what I've noticed in the last pretty much call it like 10 to 15 years, especially ever since social media really started picking up and just like the mass spread of information and everyone becoming experts, I think one, more and more people are managing their portfolios themselves. And because individuals are so much more emotional and therefore volatile than large corporations. Think about like BlackRock, for example. BlackRock is not going to make just like these decisions on a fucking whim and sell 80% of their portfolio or whatever, right? It's a fucking multi-trillion-dollar company. And I think that because the amount of investors, now this is also why I think this recession is well timed, because it'll fuck over a lot of these people that made these very poor decisions. And I think like, and it sounds very sad, but I think they shouldn't have made these extremely highly leveraged or like risky decisions that weren't right for them at that time. I think they should have been educated. So I think rightfully so. But I think the percentage of people that are, one, managing their own stock portfolio, or two, managing their own like real estate portfolio will just increase more and more and more over time. And I think that because of that, as we shift, every single time things are positive every time things are positive, my phone. Every time things are positive in the market, then everyone starts flooding in, everyone starts buying because they can buy on their own. They don't have to fucking call up an institution and wait 3 days in order to buy something. If the market starts doing this, in reality, it'll start doing this because everyone just starts fucking selling everything and everyone's just panicking.
Yeah, this is why I don't like stocks, because stocks are just so volatile. And this is why I like real estate, because no matter what you say, how volatile the real estate market is, like, or it's getting more volatile, it'll never be as volatile as clicking a fucking button.
I fully agree.
So that's why I like it better. And I do agree with you that.
What if it did?
What?
Like, what if buying and selling a home was like a few clicks away?
Oh, I'm sure it will get. Like, I actually think that it eventually will get like that with like, you know, cryptocurrencies, where it, like you could actually develop a smart contract and just boom, I own that house now. Which is something that I actually want to get into, to be quite honest. You know this. Yeah. You don't love it, but you will. So, but yeah, anyways, that's what I think of, I think people need to readjust the way that they think about, interest rates, because they're actually not bad right now. Yeah. They're actually still pretty good. The problem is like, the reason why they look bad is because you're still trying to buy out of your reach with realistic rates. What you're using still is your mindset rate from 6 months to a year ago. Yeah. With still values that are still increased over and above what they were, say, 2 years ago. Yeah. Right? Or 3 years ago.
One of the pieces of advice that you've said before that has really stuck out to me is that you'll align your decision making with what the bank is deciding, right? Because they obviously, if they feel comfortable with something, there's a reason why, and that you'll feel comfortable with it.
And they're very conservative.
If a bank doesn't feel comfortable about something, you're not going to necessarily force it, right? You might challenge it, but if it's blatantly obvious, you won't like completely go against it.
Yeah. The only reason why I will challenge it now is because I know I have other streams of income that would be able to subsidize a decision like that.
Right.
If you don't have access to that, or if you don't have something that you can leverage, other than your own income that's producing, that you're earning in order to service the debt on what you're trying to buy, you can't do it.
Right. And so, for example, like,
you shouldn't do it.
I'm still at the phase of growth in my investing career where, like, if one of my, like, I have like 3 or 4 deals right now. If one of my 3 or 4 deals goes fucking south, it'll really fucking impact me. Right. So I'm still in those early stages. So one of the things when I bought this last house, especially with how the market's transitioning so quickly, the stress test at the time, when the first conversation I had with the bank, the stress test was at like 7.7% or something. Wow. I ran the numbers at 7.7%. And I made sure that I felt fully fucking comfortable with the deal at 7.7. And like everyone that I was talking to in terms of like my friends and then like kind of like group of network that are also trying to buy real estate, they're like, oh, I can get it as low as like 3.5%. I'm going to max out my affordability at 3.5%. And I'm like, that's like, the bank stress test is telling you, Like they're stress testing it at that number for a reason,
Yeah.
right? It's not just like some abstract number that you don't have to fucking worry about. Yeah, okay, it's a worst case scenario, but the bank is running that number for a reason. And you should be able to comfortably like afford it. It's not going to fuck over your life if the rates actually increase to 7.7.
Yeah. The reason why the bank is doing that is because they don't want to own your fucking house. So they're making sure they're giving you the best option to keep your fucking house.
Exactly.
That's exactly why they're doing it.
Yeah.